other sideline. Touchdown, Oregon! Oregon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to, ladies and gentlemen, children of all wages. Welcome to the first ever SDP Studios Get Ducked, the podcast talking about the Oregon Ducks, mostly sports chat, mostly about Ducks football. Maybe we'll get into some basketball because I used to play basketball. I also used to play football, but I never had the makings of a varsity athlete with football. So, here is the thing. There we go. Let me fix that. A lot of technical issues I always have to deal with because I have to set up and take down every time I do a show. So, like, subscribe, and follow the show. And hopefully I can get to the point where I can just have my own space where I can set or have a full-on setup, and I'll never have to take down and set up, and it can just be there, and then I can start my show anytime I want. Yeah. Unfortunately, I moved on to another TV station here in San Diego, so I am not able to participate in PPR this year, so I won't be following high school football, at least in the terms of that show. I plan on obviously doing it myself and sort of following that course as time goes on with like San Diego high school football, at least in this area, by myself until I can sort of get outside of any non-competes that take place. And yeah, so I'm working with a rival station here in San Diego, television station here in San Diego, and so due to non-compete issues, I cannot participate in PPR this year. So I'm getting my sports fix by doing this show and starting this show. And yeah, so this should be a lot of fun. And this should be fun for everybody. And we can get this show on the road. And we can talk Duck football and talk Duck football futures. There's a lot of news today that actually came out. With what is it, Cody Green? Let me double check here. Yeah, Cody Green, 4-star offensive tackle. That is just a recent commit from Mater Dei in Santa Ana here in Chula Vista, where I am currently located. That can be confusing because there's another Catholic, well, not another Catholic, but a Catholic school called Mater Dei down here in Chula Vista that exists as well. That is also sort of a recruiting hotspot for Oregon, as CJ Verdell came from there. He was running back. And so, yeah. So there's that. And then also today, the Ducks became, or not became, but were the number 3 in the AP poll this year, or this year. Yeah, this upcoming season. And so, yeah, so there's a lot of news today to cover, but today isn't so much a news day. We'll obviously get to that in the future. I just wanted to sort of go over sort of why I chose to do this. And number one, I obviously have wanted to do sort of a sports department of this business, of the business that I'm going to do. And so I thought this is a better time than any to do it, since I can't participate in PPR, which most people don't like to cover high school football because they think that it's not a big deal, and they, it only matters when they go into college and the pros and so on and so forth. I don't really follow pro football that much. To me, it's very empty. What I like about college football is it covers the culture of the area that it's in. So if you want Corvallis culture, you follow Oregon State. If you want Eugene culture, you follow the University of Oregon, and whichever locality you're in, it's sort of part of the lifestyle in that town is that team. With the NFL, there's still, they're pros. They'll make money with or without you. There's kind of a separation, I guess you could say, between the fan and the franchise, in that they can sort of give or take whether you're there or not. But as a college football fan, you're actually a part of the community, So that's why I like college football way more than the NFL, and why I kind of got back in love with it, I guess, the past few years too, was covering high school sports in San Diego. And a large portion of that was because there's a lot that's a part of the pipeline that exists for Oregon recruiting. And in San Diego, they've really raided the Southern California region, which for the longest time they haven't been able to do because of USC and UCLA, but definitely USC. Reggie Bush came from Helix High School down here in San Diego County. Alex Smith was the quarterback who played at Helix High School with Reggie Bush. Roderick Robertson, a current star running back at Georgia. Unfortunately, I think he went down due to injuries this last year. He came from Lincoln, which is also the home of Oregon quarterback legend Keely Smith. He originally went to Grossmont down here in San Diego before he transferred to Oregon. He originally was going to go to SDSU down here in San Diego, but grades unfortunately led him to having to go to Grossmont College down here, and then eventually JUCO, run his JUCO route, and then end up transferring to Oregon, which he was sort of a large part of changing the culture of Oregon football in the late 90s, right before A.J. Feely and Joey Harrington came in and really built on that. And of course, his son is he is a 4-star commit to Oregon, of course, a legacy pick, and he is also now playing at Lincoln. He played his junior year last year at Lincoln High School, which is about 5 miles from where I'm currently at right now, and he will be playing his senior year in just about a couple weeks. He'll be starting that off, and it wouldn't be very surprising to many people if by the end of this season he became a 5-star recruit. And of course, CJ Verdell, like I mentioned earlier, came from Mater Dei down here in Chula Vista. There's just a lot going on in this area that has to do with obviously college football, but definitely Oregon football in that case. And so I sort of got an inside scoop on a lot, not necessarily inside of I'm special and got access to certain people, but I got an inside scoop in terms of seeing with my own 2 eyes the future. Julian Sayin was from Carlsbad. He was a 5-star recruit that was going to play for Alabama. He wanted to play for Nick Saban, and obviously when Nick Saban retired, he ended up transferring to Ohio State. So he is a big deal coming out of Carlsbad and into college football. So again, just a lot of local talent that is going into the future. So you're kind of seeing it up close. And unfortunately, a lot of Oregon fans don't have that luxury. Ugh, what's going on with me? Excuse me. They don't have that luxury of where there's 3 to 5-star recruits literally surrounding them almost at all times, and sort of seeing where the future of whatever program that they're going to is going to look like 2 to 3 years in advance. And so a lot of times they're like, I don't give a crap about high school football. Just, see me when they're in college. But it's people that pay attention in high school, obviously, as we're seeing now with Dan Lanning and at some point Mario Cristobal. that seeing the future is a good thing for the future of your program. I'm not a huge Mario Cristobal hater. I know a lot of people felt betrayed by him, but honestly, he was sort of the best bridge between Chip Kelly and Dan Lanning now. Now, would I have Dan Lanning, or would I have Mario Cristobal now versus Dan Lanning? Heck no. We definitely upgraded, and we're definitely upgrading in the sense that we are moving much, much farther forward than I think we would have under Cristobal. But for sure, he opened up the floodgates in the sense of recruiting and changing the culture of Oregon football to be much more about winning in the trenches versus, I guess, style and flash. I mean, I know that's the reputation that Oregon football has for the longest time, is that they're all gimmick and they're blur offense and all that kind of stuff, and they're soft and all that, blah, blah, blah. We can talk about that at another time and go deeper into it. I think that's more of a community chat than a segment of the show. But yeah, so that's sort of my assessment of things right now, and in the sense of I'm very excited to sort of see where things are going to go in sort of the near future with this, especially with football season coming up. I am excited to see how things are going to look in the near future, not only for Oregon football and Oregon sports, but also this channel. And I hope you follow me on this journey, and also follow my video game channel, Sean Doesn't Play. I've had an extensive hiatus from them, as well as being on this YouTube channel, because a lot of work and personal things got in the way. I'm hoping that okay, I don't care if you stop recording. I wasn't trying to record. Give me a second. All right, there we go. Again, still trying to work out the technical kinks around here. It's very hard to sort of produce a smooth show while having to keep setting up and taking down. So once again, like and subscribe to both my channels, SDP Studios and SDP Sean Doesn't Play, where you can catch all my wonderful video game action, of which I took like a year hiatus from, because like I was just talking about, a lot of personal things and a lot of work things got in the way. Luckily, with the lament of me not being a part of PPR this year, I will have more free times during the week, obviously, but also a lot of free time during the weekends to maybe do some things this year, because my Friday nights and Saturday mornings will not be taken up covering high school football in San Diego, at least in the traditional local television way that I was before. Hopefully I will be next year, and still have some time to do this. Yeah, so I don't want it to come out in the future, so I am going to mainly spend this show doing it now. And that is, I'm sort of going to go through my story of being a Duck fan. And obviously it's met with a lot of disappointment. If you're a Duck fan, you know. But I think it's sort of important, because there's one extreme detail that's going to come up where I don't want it used against me. And I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to share my true feelings about it coming up. Excuse me. I went on a long jog today, so I'm still a little out of breath. I apologize, but it's amazing what broadcasting will do to you in the sense where you actually have to sort of pay attention to your breath control. It's weird, but so I was born in Anchorage, Alaska. We're going to go that far back, way, way far back. And then a few months later, my family moved to Portland, Oregon. And then a few months later, moved to Eugene, Oregon. So I spent the first 12 or 13 years or so of my life in the Eugene area. Multiple times in Springfield, Oregon, which is a suburb. Well, not suburb, but you know what I mean. Like a region of the Eugene area, outside of, just a little bit outside of Eugene, for many years. And then, as well as Eugene proper. I moved a lot. But basically, the Lane County area, Eugene area, moving all over the place. Junction City, Harrisburg, which is about 10 to 20 miles, a little bit north of Eugene. And then eventually, around 5th grade, 6th grade, I moved to Corvallis. But, obviously, through the first, major chunk of my life and formidable years, man, I was talking out of my nose there. I sound so nasally. But I spent my time, obviously, being a Duck fan and in Duck fan culture. And it's a big deal in Eugene, despite what you may not know. My girlfriend told me for the first time after I showed her the Matt Carney Coming Home video that she said it reminded her a lot of the South or like Texas or something, how much football was ingrained in the culture. And I know a lot of you SEC fanboys wouldn't really know that, but it is. It's very much a part of the identity of the Eugene area for sure. Like, it is Grateful Dead and Duck football. And I prefer one over the other for sure. And I know many of you would think Grateful Dead, but that's not true. Yeah, so it was a bit, weirdly enough, that played a lot in my move to the Corvallis area, especially after my dad got a job at Oregon State, the rival, obviously, and it played a lot into, it played a lot in my experience there. It was, too, a part of my identity. I mean, I started following this team like Achilles Smith last year, his senior year, and really got into it, second, third grade. You obviously you think you're not that old, and you're a little too young to sort of understand what's going on. But I started playing flag football at that time as well. During the height of the Joey Harrington years. So, I mean, I've been a Duck fan for, 27 years now at this point? Oh my gosh. It's a long time. Nearly 30 years, basically. And so when I moved to the Corvallis area, I stood on business. I stood 10 toes in the sand, standing up for my team, even though I was behind enemy lines. And I remember in 5th grade, it was my first year at a new school. We had just moved up to the area. And it was during, like, Christmas time. It was right before Christmas break, and our school at the time did, Secret Santa or whatever. And someone was my Secret Santa, and they bought me a foam finger that I had for almost 10, 12 years, even after that. So I think I got rid of that thing in 2014 even. Like, it was a long time, 2015. And it was an Oregon Duck foam finger. And I opened it, and the desk were situated in a circle. So we were a circle around the classroom. And obviously 20, 30, 40 students' eyes were on me. And so I opened it, and I popped it out, obviously. And I was like, yeah. And I just looked around, and I was getting booed out the building. I was getting thumbs down and boos. I was obviously in enemy territory, except for maybe one or two students that sort of lived in the area that was somewhat neutral, where it had sort of equal Duck and Beaver fans. But I was getting booed out the building. That's without a doubt. And I just sort of laughed, because I was like, I'm a fan. Sorry. I'm standing on business. This is it. Boo me all you want. I know it makes you cheer, and it's the Beavers, and we know about that. So that's what makes you cheer. And yeah, so, and then over the years, even my dad sort of became a fan of the Beavers because he had a job at Oregon State, which I understand, company man, you gotta follow those rules of being a fan. But when the Beavers weren't playing, he was still cheering on the Ducks. And before, when we were living in Eugene and before he got a job at Oregon State, we were Duck people. And that sort of never left, even when I went to college. And yes, I attended and graduated from Oregon State. My allegiances, though, never changed. To me, I was behind enemy lines, definitely behind enemy lines, and I was a prisoner of war, of the Civil War. I saw no reason for me not to stop being a Duck fan. Like I said, it was during my earliest and most formidable years that I was a Duck fan. I wanted to go to U of O. I had a college application there. I just didn't have enough money to pay the application fee. I went to Portland State my freshman year. So even then it was still neutral ground, and it wouldn't have deterred me from being a Duck fan. And it just turned out that, my dad could get me in with the program I was trying to get into, and I tried to transfer from Portland State to Oregon State. And it was cheaper to just live with my parents and go to college in the area. And so, to me, I saw no reason to change my allegiance now. I was already in my 20s at that point. I had grown up with that, I've been a fan since, 1997, 98 when I was 5 or 6. And my family before that, in Eugene, even before that, before you were old enough to sort of know what was going on, you still heard the phrase "the pick" and things like that. So, that kind of stuff was going to happen whether or not you were paying attention or not. Like I said, it was sort of a part of the culture. The pick was indicative of the little engine that could. It was a small community of 75 to 100,000 person city. Now it's more like 200,000 to 300,000 in Eugene, but at the time it was very much like a small town. And they beat the Leviathan at the time. That was the early to mid 90s Washington Huskies team. It was a rival. And so 4 or 5 years later, people were still buzzing about the pick. And it was guys like Akili Smith that sort of made everyone forget about the pick and sort of think about moving forward. So that is the information that could be used against me. Well, didn't you graduate from Oregon State? Shouldn't you be a Beaver fan? There are reasons why I remained a Duck fan and stood strong in that, and never will falter. That being said, I have a documentary that I'm trying to make. I have a GoFundMe. It's called Chasing Ships, the Oregon Ducks and their quest for their first national championship. I'm sure we'll get into heated debates about that in the future. I hope you go look up that in the GoFundMe. In future shows, I will put that in the description, the link. I really wish you would help me out with that. I'm trying to tell the story of the people of Oregon and not just the football team. And obviously the football team has a lot to play in that. But it definitely has to, I've been talking about this whole time, how ingrained it is in the culture of the area. I think that the first national championship that the Ducks ever win will be just as big of a moment for the people of Eugene and the rest of the state of Oregon who are fans as it would be for the team itself. Yeah. So that is the sort of introduction to the show. And yeah. Um, Moving forward, I think it's going to be just all fun and having just some plain old good times following Duck football. And talking about the number 3 ranking in the AP polls, I think that, again, this has a lot to do with just the way I grew up. The Ducks were always sort of mediocre to average at best. We always celebrated if we made a bowl game, and we wouldn't. Now we're at the point where we're sort of disappointed if we make the Rose Bowl. Is national championship or bust, and I like that attitude for sure because I think a lot of what lost us those national championship games not only was strategic stuff, but a lot of it was sort of the mindset of, oh, we're just happy to be there. And I'm all for being a classy fan, but I think there still needs to be an attitude, a bit more of a killer instinct, not only within the team but within the culture. And I think hopefully that's what Dan Lanning can provide for the squad going on into the future, and hopefully this year. And with that, though, comes the death of the Pac-12, which again is unfortunate because again it's a conference that we all grew up watching. We grew up around West Coast people who grew up in that conference, except for the WAC. But I came across a lot of USC fans, conference rivals and all that as well. And it's sad, but it was the fault of the Pac-12. And I only lamented that far. I mean, look. I'm in local television, but I'm in television and media. I kind of know the game. And you can't the biggest issue that every like here with this show, if I was just on public access or even just my local channel, great. I'll be distributed to my local channels and maybe like 4 or 5 people will know me. But you can't be an exclusive network with the desire to be sort of a name brand that becomes exclusive without any distribution. And that was their biggest problem. They walked away from deals. People say they're too greedy, which in reality, yeah, I guess that's the basis of it, is they got too greedy and walked away from deals they should have taken. I think ESPN at one point, I'll do my research better in the future, but I think at one point ESPN was going to offer to sort of be a partner network with the Pac-12, like they are with the SEC, and they walked away from it because it wasn't enough money, especially as a new network or a new broadcasting, whatever. The biggest thing you have to do is, even if you take a loss at the beginning, you just have to get in front of people's eyes, because you can spend all the money you want, you can put all the infrastructure in you want, all the production value, whatever. You can invest in everything else, but if you don't, it's the same reason Hollywood got as big as they are. It wasn't because at the time they had the best cameras and the best actors and the best everything. If you look at the early Hollywood movies, they're kind of trash. I mean, not super trash, but you know what I mean. Like, you have the biggest thing was getting in front of as many eyes as possible, and the second part of that is keeping those eyes. But the first thing you need to do is get in front of as many eyes as possible. I had taken a break from watching the team for probably a good 4 to 5 years, just because I could not be able to watch a game. I either had to Google it and refresh the page over and over again to get updated scores, or I had to wait till they were on a channel that I could watch. And my dad, he switched cable providers 2 to 3 times because he couldn't get a game he couldn't get the Pac-12 network. Get your network on your television screen. That is the only way that you will in the future be able to win. I mean, bottom line, like, you can't keep it viable if you say, we're gonna stop broadcasting on ABC, CBS, NBC, ESPN, any of those channels. We're gonna go an exclusive network, Pac-12 network, and then you shit the bed trying to get them on cable providers or any other sort of platform. I mean, hell, even getting on YouTube Red or Roku, whatever, any sort of online distribution platform, the freaking WWE network. I mean, come on, put your games on that at that point. You'll get more eyes on it than what you were doing then. I mean, even to a couple years ago when I started following the Ducks again in a serious capacity, I was only seeing 3 to 4 games a year. And a lot of them were games like the Ohio State-Oregon game or something, where it was playing on ABC or ESPN. Half the games were on the Pac-12 network, and I couldn't see them. And I had cable. at the time. And I looked at other alternative cable networks, and it wasn't really there. They were always in some sort of dispute with this cable provider. They were trying to get in with this cable provider. They were trying to move to like some sort of online platform or whatever their excuse was. They couldn't do it. And that is the cardinal sin of being a media company or some sort of media operation and trying to make a business out of it. You just can't do that. You really can't. And so I have not really a whole lot of sympathy or grief for the Pac-12 going down in flames, except that it is sad in the sense of like the tradition aspect of it, more for the fans. But as a whole, I can't really find a whole lot of sympathy for them outside of just saying like, yeah, this is what happens. This is what happens when you do this. This is what happens when you could say greed, which is certainly a factor, but this is what happens when you, at the very least, fail to get on people's screens and in front of their eyes. I don't care. Instagram Live it. Whatever it takes to get in front of people's face. And they just plain failed at it. And again, the greed part or stupid business decisions part really has to do with sort of showing how unable they were to pull off getting in front of people's eyes. But the very, very bottom line is they failed to get in front of people's eyes. Why is CNN a legacy media? Why is ABC, CBS, NBC? Why are they ABC? It's in the very term broadcasting. You're casting abroad. Everyone, you buy a television antenna without a cable provider, you will get those channels. Anywhere in the world or country at this point, you will find some affiliate of this channel playing movies or television shows that the channel provides. In 1995, all you had to do was get a piece of tin foil and an antenna or whatever, and you can find Friends Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Because at some point, an NBC channel frequency wave will find its way across an antenna and hit your television set. And so that was the major failure of the Pac-12 network. And of course, it comes down to Wazoo and Oregon State being the ones going down with the ship. Very, very indicative, obvious, and unsurprising of those two programs being the one that got stuck behind. At this point, this is why I agree with SDSU at this point being more in the new iteration of the Pac-12 and probably the leaders of it, because they're actually making moves to move forward. Oregon State, obviously, they were just trying to cut off their nose to spite their face. Just like I have a lot more sympathy for Wazoo at this point than I do Oregon State, because one, like I said, I spent a lot of time, lived with a lot of the people in Corvallis in that area, and obviously went to school at Oregon State, and I got a very front row seat to the fan base there, and therefore don't have much sympathy for them either. But with that being said, when the Ducks moved to the Pac-10 or the Big Ten, and I'm the kind of fan that is pessimistically optimistic. You know, I think that they have a chance to succeed every year, but being a fan of the Ducks, you know, you find yourself often being disappointed. And I usually expect for the worst and hope for the best with the team. And even now, which how much they've progressed and so little of time at this point, but even just over a huge spread out of time, they've progressed a lot in just the last like 20 to 30 years. And it's great to see. There's a lot of highs with that. And consequently, though, there's a lot of lows that go with that as well. And, you know, I used to play sports. I played football up until high school. Then I quit to focus on basketball. And I played basketball pretty much as far into high school as I could. And, you know, I know that, and this is sort of, I'll go into the tone of this channel, for one. And this relates to what I'm saying. You're not going to find predictions from me, score predictions or anything like that. I'm not going to be like, oh, yeah, it's going to be 47-23 Ducks all day. Because even if the Ducks do win that game, or they win out in the whole season like you predicted, they're not going to be the score that you say it is. So what's the point of even making that prediction? You know? Like, you're like, 47-95 Ducks. Or other team, whatever. It's like, okay, the team won like you said, but the score wasn't even close to what you said it was. So what's the point? What is the point of making predictions? Or what's the point of making those detailed predictions? Ducks are going to win the national championship this year. I can't tell you how many times I've heard fans say that and how many years that we've fallen short, especially this last year. We've lost to Washington 3 times in the last 2 years, twice this last year, and obviously being the second time in the Pac-12 championship. And so many fans, even after the Washington loss, were talking about how the Ducks were going to win the national championship. Under what circumstance or what sort of evidence did you have that they were going to win that year? I always said they weren't. I'd want them to, obviously, but they weren't. They just weren't, and they didn't. And that was the facts of the matter. And it wasn't because of Washington. It was because of the team that they didn't win. They had a very great season, very successful season. I have a lot of respect for what Bo Nix brought to the squad, and the rest of the team and Dan Lanning, but I knew they weren't going to win the national championship, so why are you saying that? So either you're going to be wrong and look like a doof, or you're going to be right and sort of look like a doof, and even then it won't even really age well, because you guessed the score to be 59-0, and instead it was 59-14 or whatever. What's the point of that? But I will I'm going to be realistic, okay? I'll say, like, here are the things that will help the Ducks win. And if they do certain things like that, they're more likely to win than not. But, again, as a former athlete, and not in the way of the Al Bundy way where I'm still reliving the glory days. I'm just saying I played organized sports at one point, and I am aware that the game isn't won on predictions. The game is won on the field or on the court. You just never know. So what's the point of doing all that? Watch and play the game and see how it goes. And then you can go back and talk about why you lost, why you won, why you didn't win as much as you should have, and why maybe this loss wasn't so bad, or why it was a moral victory or whatever. And why she count as a moral victory. But there's no point in, or you can say like, look, this team isn't that great, and our team is great. It's gonna look like a win, but we gotta see. That's why the game isn't played. Like the Ducks are number 3 in the AP polls right now, preseason. If we ended the season now based on those predictions, they wouldn't win the national championship. They would be, we'll call it like obviously a BCS or a New Year's Day Bowl winner. Well, let's just call them Rose Bowl champions right now, or let's call them Sugar Bowl, Orange Bowl, whatever, Fiesta Bowl champions right now. But they got to be able to prove themselves on the field. That's the only way, If they were ranked number 3, they're not going to win a national championship until they play. And if they play to win, and they win the national championship, then boom, they're national champions. Even though they started at number 3, you have to prove yourself in your play. And that's what a lot of this channel is going to be about. Is, again, you can make predictions in the sense that, look, Oregon's playing Idaho. With the people they have on the squad, with the coach, whatever. It's going to be likely they're going to win, but they have to do these things to win. Because on any given Saturday, any given Sunday, a team can hit. And they can win, even though they're not supposed to. That's why upsets exist. That's why they're fun to watch. Because they're not supposed to win, but they do. So we can say, like, look, if Oregon controls the defense, if they win the trenches, if they run well, Dylan Gabriel's on, whatever, then they'll win, or they should win. It'd be very hard to beat them. And that'll be the bottom line of this channel. I'm not going to do stupid predictions and anything like that. I'm going to say this is, because with every team, the dynamic's different. With this team, you got to play way better in the trenches. With this other team, you can maybe give a little bit on the trenches, but you got to have a strong secondary, whatever, like those type of things. And that's what we're going to cover, not cover, this isn't like ESPN or whatever, but that's what we're going to look at and talk about versus predictions and score predictions or whatever. And that's sort of the mentality I go into it, because again, there's teams that the Ducks should have beat, but they didn't, and there was reasons why they didn't. And then, Austin Stadium has the reputation that that's where good teams go to die, because, certain teams should have gone in there and beat the Ducks, but they didn't. And there was a reason they didn't. And that's what we'll go through. And the thing, too, with the Big Ten change is, we're going through the Pac-12 all these years, and it's a very cannibalistic conference. People say it's weak or whatever. But the thing is like, every team could beat every team in the Pac-12. There's not a Vanderbilt of the Pac-12. The bottom of the Pac-12 is still good enough to beat the top. And those teams seem to change every year, because if there's anything that can be said about Pac-12 teams, is they're very good at adjusting. If they have a bad year, they quickly make sure the next year isn't a bad one. So that's why even like when you play the Beavers every year, they're a different team every year. Or Arizona State, or Arizona, or UCLA, Cal, all those teams, they were always adjusting per year, because a lot of times the fan base is also, I mean, hell, Mark Helfrich had a 4-8 year. You would think a lot of times, a lot of coaches in other conferences or in other schools would say, give him a couple more years, see if he can turn it around. He didn't last after that 4-8 year, especially because before the 4-8 year, they went to the national championship. The idea from there was to progress and actually win the damn game. But he went backwards just by 1 year, though. You can't even say it was a rebuilding year because they didn't allow for that. Every Pac-12 team did that. They always adjusted immediately. And so the Ducks, any team actually really, but we'll say for the Ducks here, they didn't take those teams for granted. None of those teams. They didn't take them for granted. Anytime. And no team could. And they knew each team like that, you know. They play these teams every year, obviously. It's like seeing your old cousin or whatever. And then you see that your cousin is doing better in life or whatever. And you adjust accordingly, whatever that means. But the analogy doesn't work great, but the idea is the familiarity. With the Big Ten, everyone's talking about how the Ducks are going to be undefeated this year. It's going to be much tougher. I think that could be an argument in the Pac-12, but this year it's going to be tougher. Because one, in general, you got tough teams. Like, back in the day you had USC. They were on par with teams like Ohio State and occasionally Penn State, but Michigan or whatever, like those teams, those trademark, quote-unquote, blue blood teams. And so, those games are going to be coin flip games. And obviously, the Ducks have done everything in their power at the moment to make sure the coin flip is a little less 50-50, possibly, but obviously it's still incredibly plausible that they'll lose or may not win. And the rest of the conference, though, yeah, sure, they could be cakewalks or they could be beatable teams and all that, but you just don't know. You're not familiar with these teams anymore. It's completely new. It's like being in the new kid in school. It's just not going to be that easy. You don't know who's going to be a trap team. For the longest time, it was pretty well known for the Ducks. Arizona State was a trap team. They had to focus up. Arizona was a trap team. They had to focus up. Utah could be a trap team, or even just a team equivalent to them that could easily beat them. They had to focus up. You don't know who those teams are going to be in the Big Ten. And there's going to be a margin of error that you're going to have to deal with. And so we'll find out. But I think that if the Ducks are successful enough this season to make the playoff, they'll make a decent enough run. Even despite the whole familiarity thing, the idea, though, is just getting into the playoff. And if they do, they can focus up and go on a run. The idea is just getting to the playoff to get on a run. The 2007 National Championship team of the Oregon State baseball program is the exact same thing. They never should have done the same thing they did in 2006. It was a completely different roster. They were honestly not that much better, not that great of a team compared to 2006. They had a bit of a decline, but they squeaked in. Arizona State, I'm pretty sure, vouched for Oregon State in 2007 to be in the College World Series. Like, they barely made it in. Like, they were on the bubble, like a college basketball squad going into March Madness. They were on the bubble, and they were about to be left out. But they got in, and then they went on a run, and they won. Somehow they won and became back-to-back champions. So the Ducks are plenty capable of that this year. I like what Lanning's building there. They're building in the right way, not only to compete in the Big Ten, but to be contenders in that way. Because, unfortunately, still, football may have changed a lot over the course of the years. but it is still a game of inches in the trenches. It's still won and lost by those. You can't have a receiver that runs around everybody anymore. That's just not how it works. Still. Even now with the rule changes and everything like that favors like the special positions. And even now, back when I played, I wish those rules were in the way in that case, because I was a receiver. So I would have benefited from any of that, but it's still a game that's won and lost in the trenches, and Oregon finally understands that, and they're not having to try to make 2 to 3 star athletes overperform and overachieve, and they're starting to get better recruits like Cody Green from Mater Dei in Santa Ana, like Akili Smith from Lincoln, the 4-star quarterback. And this year with the strong, 23 to 25 classes, basically all those getting 4 and 5 stars. They're now realizing that you'd rather take a gamble with an underperforming 5-star than trying to take a gamble with a properly performing 3-star that might not overperform. That's asking a lot of those athletes, for sure. And unfortunately, though, that's just the way it is still. And, the Ducks as a program, are innovative in a lot of ways with the uniforms and the facilities and all that kind of stuff, but they were a little bit behind the curve on recruiting, and that's the most important part, and they're finally catching up. And a lot of that also has to do with just the fact that it's very hard to pull a 5-star from Alabama or Ohio State. And now that they got a guy from SEC country that's kind of gotten outside of that bubble and has lived up to that hype in sort of a way, and sort of proven what you can build up here or up there, because I'm in California now, that is possible, and people are starting to buy that. That's a chain reaction that's beginning. And I'm not a cynical fan, but again, I hope for the best and expect the worst, because that's just how it is. And but yeah, so you won't get predictions from me, but you'll get a certain angle and analysis from me that is a lot from a fan's perspective that understands that games are won and lost on the field, and 45-13 predictions don't really do anything. And you have to take a bit of a wait-and-see approach. You just do. As a player, you always had to say, like, go out and play on Friday night. Then you'll know the results. That's just the way that it is. And I think that's the best approach to have. And as a fan, that's sort of the same approach that you have to have. Because you'll also save yourself a bit of the disappointment that you might be experiencing. If you think your team's going to blow out the team, every Saturday or Sunday, every week, every year, you're going to be disappointed. And so you just have to sort of have that approach and that mindset going into it. And that also helps not make excuses for when the team loses, because they don't make excuses, Even when they win, they don't make excuses. They have to look at things that they need to improve. And it's okay. Improvement's okay. Sort of the same thing with this whole idea now of loving yourself or whatever where you're at. Sure, you shouldn't find yourself in a spiral when you find yourself in a place you don't want to be where in your life or your personal life. But you should always be looking to improve yourself, even when things are going great. You're like, well, how did they get great? Well, I did this and this and this and this. Well, how do I get even greater than I am now, and what helped me progress than I was before? Well, I did this and this and this, and I didn't do this and this and this. Well, I need to do this going on in the future, and I definitely need to cut this out going on into the future. That's okay, and that's how it is. That's just how it is, and I am also a part and a big part of that mindset comes with accepting being wrong sometimes. I was very skeptical of Bo Nix. I cannot be the only one that was skeptical of Bo Nix when he stepped on the Oregon campus. We all saw him at Auburn. He was able to beat Oregon, and we saw that of him. But when he was playing in the SEC and when he was playing any other team, in the country, any other year that he had, he earned his nickname Bo Picks. So he wasn't really lighting it up over there down south or down over east or northwest, whatever. Sure, he was able to gamble and play some hero ball against the Ducks, and he was able to beat them his freshman year, his debut. But the rest of the time, it didn't really necessarily work out. So, of course, we all should have been skeptical when he stepped foot on Eugene campus. He didn't really necessarily prove himself, especially after Mariota was there, Herbert was there. There was a lineage of quarterbacks that were pretty darn good in Oregon, and we weren't really going to expect much less. And he did prove himself, and I was more than happy to say, you know what, I was wrong on that. And that's the beauty also of not making predictions, is that you're like, you know what, I'm skeptical moving forward with this person. I am with Dillon Gabriel. We can go farther into that. Again, I'm very happy to accept that I'm wrong. It seems like I will be. I'll accept the realism that I will be wrong about Dillon Gabriel, but I'm still skeptical. So I think that's sort of the mindset. Every player that's going to be on the roster is not the greatest in the world. They're also not the worst in the world either. And we're not going to win every single game. And that's okay for one, but also I think that's the right approach to have. But with that being said, now that I've sort of laid the expectations of what happens when you watch this show, I look very forward to this season and moving forward on seeing where this season goes and working on the documentary I'm trying to make and following this team once again. And it'll be fun to be able to follow them even better now that they'll probably have a little bit better distribution. And, of course, we can, in the future, continue to keep going into greater detail on all these topics. There's plenty of time for that. There's plenty of ability of airtime for that. And it's going to be fun. Nonetheless, it's going to be fun. Nonetheless, and it's going to be fun the whole entire time along the way. And I'm still going to try to keep up with high school football as much as possible down here in San Diego, and as much as I'm allowed to. And with that being said, I think this will be it for now. And again, I look forward to the future, and we all should. And keep watching, like, and subscribe, and comment. Do all the stuff that engages this channel. And do all the stuff that will keep fun conversations going. I want this to be a community, and I want this to be something that everyone can be a part of. It's not just listening to my crazy rambles. And so with that being said, I think that's it for me for the night. And I'd like to thank you for watching.
Foot race to their sideline. Touchdown, Oregon!